Well, hello there, welcome back to another Clizzard video. Today we're gonna be talking about Union Arena. I have technically recorded Union Arena videos in the past. Have I uploaded them? I don't even remember. But Union Arena just Japanese Union Arena just dropped their entire card list of Tokyo Ghoul, which I've been literally refreshing the website every day for like a month now just to check up on news on that. Because I've been really excited about the Tokyo Ghoul in Union Arena. It's what I wanted, and when they announced it, I was incredibly excited. I made a video about it, but again, I don't think I uploaded that. But today, I just wanted to talk about some kind of making decks. Because in Union Arena, there's 3 different colors, and then you can make different decks. And even though the decks make themselves, I think it's still fun theory crafting and talking about the cards. And of course, while I'm going to be talking about decks and theory crafting in this video, I encourage you to always try the deck out for yourself and then change it however you want to change it, right? There's a lot of ways you can build decks in Union Arena. You can try to go for more triggers, right? Try to maximize the triggers you get in your deck. Maybe you want to go greedy and play few amounts of 0 drops and 1 drops to maximize your end game potential. Or maybe you want to play safe and play a bunch of early game cards, right? There's a lot of ways you can edit your decks. And so these are just some of my ideas, and I just wanted to talk about it. At the end, I'll also talk a little bit about like money financials, because I think the money side of trading card game is always interesting as well. But yeah, well, let's just begin. Before I begin, also, I'm using xburst.dev. This is going to be the Japanese side of it, just because the Tokyo Ghoul is going to be releasing in Japan next week, is when the official release date for the cards are. And then at least in the States, in the United States, we get it in mid-April. So basically, even though this video I'm making talking about cards, we're not really going to get these cards. At least in the US, we're not going to get these cards until like April. But it's still fun to theory craft early. And I just can't wait to talk about this stuff. Like, I was just, again, literally refreshing the website and their Twitter page every day for like the past few months. Yep. Okay. First off, I do want to go ahead and talk about all the purple cards. So this video is the purple video. We're going to talk about purple decks. And the thing about purple is that we get a structure deck. We get a Tokyo Ghoul structure deck, and it features purple cards. And so because of that, normally how it works is each set has 3 colors normally. Some sets I think come with 2 colors only. But normally sets come with 3 colors. Those colors can be purple, red, blue, green, yellow. And then out of those colors, out of the 3 colors, each color you can make around 2 decks. Now, give or take 2 decks, but so basically in a Union Arena set, you can make maybe 6 decks. And of course, the structure deck could help supplement a deck, or it could be a deck of its own. And of course, volume 2s, when volume 2s come out of a certain set, like we had Bleach volume 1, and then Bleach volume 2 comes out, and to introduce another color, but they also introduce support for older decks, which means that maybe you can get more decks after using the support cards. But if it's just volume 1, you're going to get 6 decks. With purple, with the structure decks, in my opinion, you actually get 3 decks. So we're starting off with a Touka Deck here. But I want to go ahead and read the cards. I just want to go through quickly all the purple cards and tell you my kind of thoughts about them. And then, it'll make more sense when I talk about the decks. We have 0 drop Kaneki. You always want to have 0 drops in your decks, of course, when you build. 0 drops with no effects like this are pretty bad unless you're using them to raid. So if you have a raid Kaneki, then you have to use 0 drop Kaneki. If you don't have a raid Kaneki in your deck, do not use this card. We also have Rize, 0 drop Rize. This, in my opinion, is only important for the Touka deck. This is only important in the Touka deck. If the other Kaneki deck that I'm going to show you doesn't utilize this card, so you only really want to use this card in the Touka deck. And in this Touka deck, I don't even use this card. So Touka, again, same theory. She's useless because she doesn't have an effect in normal decks. But if you're using a Touka deck, then you need 4 copies of this card. No questions about it. Tsukiyama. If I butcher these names, by the way, I'm sorry. Japanese You would think that after listening to Japanese music for like 7 years, I would be pretty decent. No. My Japanese is ass. I well, I swore. So has it been 5 minutes yet? This card isn't very good. But again, if you're playing a Sukiyami deck that has raids, then you need him. Now I've talked about a few bad zero cost cards. Now we have the best zero cost card of the set, probably. Now the problem is with Hinami. I'm gonna make another video where I talk about the set as a whole. This video I really just want to focus on the decks. But I will say I'm very biased to Hinami. She's like literally my second favorite anime character. I love Hinami. And so I'm very biased, of course. And I think that this card is the best card of the set. It's a good card because it's a zero drop that has a trigger, has a draw one trigger. You see, Rize didn't have a trigger. So like trigger cards generally are more valuable because it's like if you're losing, you can actually come back. As opposed to if you're losing and you hit non-trigger or useless triggers, then you fall behind pretty quickly. So it's a zero drop with a trigger, a good trigger, and its ability is actually a 2-in-1. So usually zero drops have an ability where you can draw one, discard one, right? It's very premium zero drops have that effect, in my opinion. And those zero drops usually have when I say zero drop, I mean like it costs 0 energy, but it still takes an action point. That's what I mean by zero drop. So when I say drops, I mean like in terms of energy, because technically this is a 1 drop, but most Union Arena cards are a 1 drop. Anyways, not only does it have that, but it has if it's your turn, choose one of your characters and give it 1,000 BP. And again, usually zero drops is either one or the other. It's usually draw 1 card, discard 1 card, and it's a draw trigger, or it's a choose 1 character on your field, have it gain 1,000 BP, and that's an active trigger. But Hinami here, you can actually choose one or the other, which makes this card incredibly versatile. Because early game, you might want to draw 1, discard 1, and then late game, maybe you need the extra 1,000 BP to get over a 5,000 body, so that your impact lands. So again, I'm biased, but this is the first time I've seen a zero drop with a choose one of the following effect, and she still has a trigger. So I'm just biased because Hinami is my favorite character, but I mean, this is a great card. She's so good, and I'm so biased towards Hinami. I use this card in all my purple decks because I just think that she's good, and she's especially good in purple. We have Hinami's mom, Ryoko, and then this one's your classic non-trigger. You can rest this card, and it dies at the end of the turn, but you get double energy regeneration. So it could be very helpful. I do use this in some decks. We have Itori. We're getting to the 1 drops. Look at the top 3. Place one of them in your outside area. Place the other top of your deck in any order. So this card is pretty good because it's a 1 drop, and then you can put 1 card in your discard pile. But then you can also, when I say discard pile, I mean what's it called? It's like called a trash pile. I should probably look at the terminology. It's been a while since I played Union Arena. And this card is like, you can also stack the deck. So like, let's say you don't have a 2 drop in your hand, you can stack your deck so that you get a 2 drop as your next draw. So that's super strong. Kaya Irimi, which is the gentleman in the back, not the 2 people sitting down. Those are the workers. Well, I guess they're all workers. On play, choose 1 character that requires 1 or less energy to your hand. Return it to your hand. So basically, this is your 1 drop, 2 energy producing cards. A lot of Union Arena cards have this effect where you basically return like a 0 drop in your hand, and then this Kai generates 2 energies for a 1 drop. But that does mean that you're removing a card from your field, which means that it's like a -1 action point. But this makes 2 energy. So, you can think of the synergy of him between Hinami, but for example, Hinami, you draw 1, discard 1, and then next turn you use this guy, bring Hinami back into your hand, and then you can play Hinami again, draw 1, discard 1. So, super strong there. 1 drop Kaneki when in front line, so it needs to be in a front line, and you can only activate this effect when it's active. top card, look at it, you can put it at the top or put it in the discard pile. So again, this card is pretty good in the sense that you can stack your deck, you know, you can add to your graveyard. However, it needs to be on your front line and it needs to be active. And having a card with 2,500 BP on your front line is not the greatest because it might not do the greatest amount of damage. That being said though, there are effects that you can utilize, like, oh, you can, even though it's on your front line, you can still utilize it with, you know, Touka's effect. And so he's not useless on the front line. That being said though, he doesn't have a trigger, so keep that in mind. We have 1 cost Touka. When on the front line, you can rest one of your active Kanekis on your front line. So there you go, you rest this guy after you use his effect or whatever. And then you gain 2,000 BP. So now your 1 cost Touka is 4,000 BP. So that's super strong. Also, she is a color card. So every deck you can only run up to 4 colors. And you can mix and match the colors. But Touka color, purple color I should say, purple colors always have the same effect. Basically, you get to play a 2 cost or less from your outside area to your front line active. Which, if you think about it, well, if you play like a Kaneki, you know, do you see what's happening here? You see the synergy? So, super strong. Kaneki doesn't have a trigger, but if you pair him up with Touka, then he starts becoming super strong. 1 cost, Shuu. Look at the top of your card, get an event, add it to your hand. If you get an event, then you discard a card. And then place if you don't get an event, then you just discard the 2 cards. So again, this card is great at adding stuff to your discard pile because you need that when you play him. And then it also can add an event to your hand. But you're looking at the top 2 cards of your decks. What's the chance of you getting an event? That event could be a special. It could be your final trigger. Could be your special trigger or your final trigger. So that's not bad. 1 drop Hinami. Unfortunately, this card is garbage. No trigger. Choose one of your characters. Give it 1,000 BP. This cards again. A lot of cards have this effect. These cards are generally not good unless there's like a raid. So since Hinami doesn't have a raid target, this card is pretty useless. I wouldn't recommend you use her. Hideyoshi. Classic character. On play, place 1 Kaneki with 4 or less required energy from your outside area to the top of your deck. So basically, you're just putting a Kaneki that's 4 or less to the top of your deck that has been discarded, or that's in the graveyard. Not the greatest. I didn't find myself able to fit a card like this into my decks. I just don't think he's very good. Very important card here. We're getting to the 2 drops. When in your outside area. Okay, so when this card is in your outside area, which again, think about it. Use Hinami, discard, draw a card. Or draw a card and discard this card. If you have a Kaneki, you can place Rize underneath the Kaneki. And then you can make him active if you decide to give it minus 1,000 BP. So this card is incredibly strong because you need to have cards underneath Kaneki to have additional effects. For example, or I'll talk about it later, but some cards need cards under it for additional effects. And so Rize is there to do that. Also, purple, there's a lot of opportunity to discard cards. Again, Hinami. So discarding her is not bad because you have a lot of opportunity to discard her. Only problem with her is that, again, she has no trigger. We have Nishiki. I actually really like this card. On play, just send a top 2 cards of your deck to your discard pile. This could be very bad if you discard some important cards like your special triggers or your important raid cards. Then that could be very bad. Maybe you bring him back with this dude. But he's a 2 cost that has a decent effect that has a trigger. You can't go wrong with him. Yoshimura. Again, a lot of characters have this effect where if they're active, they get additional energy generation. So if you need that energy regeneration, which you do need for the bigger cost Kanekis, then you would want to play him. So I think he is interesting in that sense. He has no trigger though, so that's unfortunate. Pervert, how disappointing. So I guess someone's abusing him of being a pervert. I do see someone in the background. You can only use one of this card per turn and draw one, and then if you have a Shuu on your area, set one of your action points to active. So this is a great card in the sense that you basically just get a card in your discard pile. So like, right, you play this card and you get a card in your discard pile. It makes it so that your deck kind of has like 46 cards if you think about it. It's also a color trigger, and you know, if you're playing a Shuu deck, you do not want to play the Touka. You would rather play this as your color trigger. So it's a great card. It's also an event card which you can get with that 1-drop. 2-drop Kaneki. Again, if there's a card face down underneath it, it gains impact. Negate, so nullify impact. So again, Rize, you put it underneath this Kaneki. On your turn, it also gains 1000 BP. So it means that it's a low cost card that can have a lot of damage. Honestly, I wouldn't really put cards underneath this card. This card is just a raid target and a 2 cost and a trigger card. So like, I wouldn't really use the card for its ability, but more of its, of its name and its trigger. Inteku, that's the coffee restaurant. It's a field card, so you probably put it on your energy line. On play, make one of your characters active. You can rest this card and retire this card on like the following turn when it's active. And then you can choose one of your cards on your field and make it active. Now again, that it does have synergy. It does have synergy with your Kaneki. If you don't want to play the Rizes, maybe you play stuff like this instead. It does have a trigger, get, right? Rize doesn't have a trigger. This card is able to get your Kanekis active. So there's another option you have. I would definitely am interested in experimenting with this card. Besides Hinami, I think Uta might actually be the next best purple card. Now, Uta himself isn't going to do a lot of damage. Like, he isn't like the carry of the deck, but he's just so versatile that I use 3 copy of him in that deck. I use 4 copy of him in that deck, and then I use 4 copy of him in that deck. So Uta is just an all-rounder card. He's super strong. He's an SR, so you're gonna be splooging a lot on getting a lot of Utas, but he's just super strong. Now look at this effect. On play, he not only is he a 3-drop with a trigger, but he also gives you 2 energies. So already this guy is just high value anyways. Like, even if he didn't have an ability, an active trigger, 2 energy regeneration, I mean, that's already kind of premium, right? On play, look at top 4 cards of your deck, and then place 1 of them in your outside area. So you look at top 4 cards, you're always going to put 1 in the outside area. Then you can add a raid card or a card that costs 2 energies or 2 action points to play into your hand. And if you do that, you can discard another, or you have to discard another card. But it's not you have to, you get to discard another card. It's actually a good thing to discard another card with him. And then those 2 other cards you put at the bottom of your deck. So his first ability, you're able to always discard 1 card. You can discard 2 cards if you get a raid card or a card with 2 costs. Now, Uta isn't the greatest in the Touka deck, but he is so strong in the other decks. So that's why I use only 3 copies of him in this deck. Honestly, you don't even need to use Uta in a Touka deck. If you want to use other cards, then you can go ahead and use other cards. But I just like him because you have the opportunity of fishing for Rizes and discarding her. Because I think this deck is... I haven't tested it out, obviously, but like, I feel like if you're able to get as many Rizes in your discard pile... it is interesting though, because you can have multiple Rizes in your discard. I haven't thought about this yet, but you can have multiple Rizes in your discard pile and just keep adding them to Kanekis. So maybe you only really need like a few. But anyway, this guy is able to dig for your Rizes and put them in your outside area. But he's also able to search for your raids. And you have, your Touka raid and your Kaneki raid. So again, he's good. That would have already been good enough. But now he has an additional effect where this is wrong because actually it's supposed to be on your main phase. You can rest this card and retire this card. So basically, you're getting rid of him, and you can't do it on turn you play him unless you make him active somehow. But you can look at top 3 cards of your deck, add 1 to your hand, and place the remaining in your outside area. So once again, he's able to get you more cards. He's able to put more cards in your outside area. This is, again, next to Hinami, he is the best card. Hinami, I think, is a little better because she's 0 drop, and she is a cheap card versus an SR. But, I mean, this card is great. This card is the best purple card in terms of power. I think he's just so good. He's just so good. It's crazy. Let's go on to some useless cards. NG Koma. This card could be strong if you know what your opponent's playing. If they're playing yellow or red, then this guy is one energy less, so he only requires 2 energies. Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, 2 energy generation. He gives you 2 energy generation, but he doesn't give you a trigger. So like, who would you rather play? Would you rather play this guy who doesn't have a trigger, who might not always activate his ability, or would you play Uta? You know what I'm saying? Like, Uta just makes all these other cards look so bad. Renji, Yomo, if you have 10 or more cards in your outside area and removal area, you get 1000 BP. Now, it's rare to have 2 energy generations with 4000 BP and a trigger. So this card is actually quite good, but again, I'd rather just play Uta. You have a Ghoul Restaurant, and this card is a little bit confusing because on play, you put 2 cards from your removal area into your outside area. So usually cards put stuff from your discard pile into your removal pile. But this card, you put cards in your removal pile into the outside pile, which is a little bit backwards, but that's fine. And then on main phase, you can rest this card. And then if you have a Shuu on board, you can place 2 cards from your outside area to your removal area, which is more traditional. And then you draw 1 and discard 1. So basically, you're actually only removing 1 card from your discard pile to your removal area because you are going to put another card back into that removal pile, or I'm sorry, that discard pile, and then you get a card in your hand. You notice I've been using discard pile and outside area kind of interchangeably here because I think more card game people are familiar with the term discard pile, and that's what I use. So this card could be good. Coffee is your final trigger. So basically, you always play 4 of these in every deck. You can either play Coffee or you can play the Harmony that intertwines deeply on the tongue is amazing. So would you rather play Coffee or the Harmony that intertwines deeply on the tongue is amazing? You know, you always play 4 of these in your deck. 3 cost Touka. On play, this gains 5,000 or 500 BP. And then on play, you can rest 1 Kaneki with a required energy of 4 or less. And then you can set this card as active. So this card is able to come out active 4,000. Not the greatest because she doesn't have trigger. But, you know, at 3 costs that can attack instantly. I mean, you can't go wrong with that, can you? 3 cost Nishiki. Now, on play, look at top card of your deck, place it on top or outside area. And this guy is actually quite good. Kind of a budget I was gonna say kind of a budget Uta if you don't have the SRs, because he is an SR. Same trigger, same energy requirement, same BP, same energy regeneration, but just has a slightly different effect. You can stack your deck, or you can make the top deck, make the next card you draw better, and also he can add to your outside area. So again, I think this card is actually pretty good. It's just that Uta is so strong that I would never use this card. You can use both, I guess, but yeah, Uta is just better. But if you don't have Uta, I think this guy is a fine replacement. Like, fine. Kaneki's Mask, draw 3 event card. Put 1 card in your outside area. I just haven't found place to put this card in my decks. It doesn't have a trigger, so it's just not really a card I want to use. 4-drop Uta. Choose 1 card. Choose one of your... So basically, you choose one of your opponent's cards on their field, minus 1000 BP. And then you can also pay 1 action point and then minus another 1000 BP. So, I mean, the thing is, there are just so many offensive options that I don't think Uta's that good. He's just, like, 4-drop Uta is just not that good. we have Rei Touka, and she's quite good in the sense that she has multiple abilities. So on play, you get to either draw one card. I mean, that's already good. On play, draw one card, but you can also choose the other one where you get to play a character with 3 or less energy and set it to active. Oh, I'm sorry, you choose one of your characters set as active. So let's say your Kaneki is resting. You can play this and then make him active again. And then once you make him active, you can use the second ability where you can put one of your Kanekis and rest him, and then you get double attack with Touka. So basically, Touka interacts with like your Ken Kanekis, and she's able to attack twice, or you can just make her draw an additional card, which you can't go wrong with that. So a double attacker is good. Not only that, but keep in mind that that effect to trigger double attack, it's not a on play only. Like you can use that multiple times. So if your opponent doesn't get rid of your Touka, then she's just keep on double attacking, or she has the potential to keep on double attacking. So this is a scary card to keep alive. Shuu is, I think this is a really good endgame card. So on play, you may place 2 cards from your outside area to remove an area, and then you can set this card to active if you have 10 or more cards in that removal area. So that's super strong, right? You don't need to do that, but if you want to, you can go ahead and do that. And then this is the most important effect: is on retire, place 2 other Shuu cards from your outside area to the removal area. So again, you're putting it from your discard to your removal area, and if you do, you can add this card to your hand. So that's why I say this is a late game card. It's because like you can keep recycling him, and while you do that, you're moving cards from your outside area to your removal area. So his initial effect could come into play. So this card is strong. It can come out as active, as a non-raid one action point card, which is good because one action point cards that are non-raids coming out as activists is always powerful. Renji Yomo, similar to what we saw earlier with Uta, choose one other character in your area gave 1000 BP. Then you can spend 1 action point to give another character on your area 1000 BP. So instead of debuffing your opponent, it buffs your allies. And yeah, that's kind of it. Again, there's so many good offensive options that this guy just doesn't seem that good. And it doesn't play as active as some other cards do. That's fine, Ken Kaneki. I'll be honest with you, I don't even know who's on the artwork of this card. Is that supposed to be Touka? I'm seeing a little bit of like a triangle, so I'm guessing this is Touka. I'm not sure. It's funny because if it is Touka, you don't even use this in the Touka deck. Look at the top 4 cards of your deck and then add one of them to your hand and place the remaining in your outside area. During this turn, reduce the action point of the next Ken Kaneki card with the original energy cost of 5 or more by your hand by 1. So basically, it makes it so that your 5 costs or above Ken Kanekis are only 1 action point instead of 2. And then you can also, search your deck for cards. So it's good in the sense that you're ditching cards and you get to add a card among them into your hand, which, that card could be a Ken Kaneki with the requirements. And it has a trigger. So this card is the bread and butter for the Ken Kaneki deck. You need, in my opinion, 4 of these cards in the Ken Kaneki deck. Not this deck, but in the Ken Kaneki deck. We have Structure Deck Ken Kaneki. This card you get in the Structure Deck. On play, draw 2, and then discard 1 card. That's pretty good. Don't forget, Nullify Impact is always good for late game. And then, if it's on the front line, if you have a card underneath it, Rize, you can switch to active. So that's the whole strategy. Basically, you summon him, he gives you cards, maybe you discard a Rize, and then you make him rested by using one of your Touka's abilities, and then you can go ahead and set him to active again, and then attack with him. So, that's the whole strategy of the Touka deck, is you're just manipulating Ken Kaneki with your Toukas, so that your Toukas get their abilities triggered, and your Ken Kaneki can still remain active so that he can attack. That's it. Also, there's a good amount of draw power because Ken Kaneki draws, Touka potentially draws. So, that's it. That's the whole strategy of the deck. I've already talked about it. Touka, Kiri, why am I saying her last name? This is another structure deck card. It actually costs 2 action points, so keep that in mind. It costs 2 action points, but this character always plays as active, which is nice. You know, if you think about it, raid cards actually cost 2 action points and 2 cards, because you have to use an initial card and then you have to raid on top of that card. So you're using 2 action points and you're using 2 cards. Well, this card only uses 1 card. And then again, you can rest 1 Kaneki, and then this card gains double attack, and during its second attack, it gets impact 1. Now that's great because, you know, the first attack, if they decide to, like, basically they're probably always gonna eat the second attack, and it just makes Touka, like, they're gonna block the first attack, which means they can't get special triggers to pop Touka, and so they're gonna eat the second attack because it has impact, because it's already gonna do damage, and then they hit their trigger, which might be a special. So what I'm trying to say is impact on the second attack is better than impact on the first attack when it comes to double attack characters. So Touka is great. Touka is great. And yeah, those are your 3 options. You have 2 4-cost Toukas and 1 3-cost Touka. There is nothing here that belongs to you. This is, I think, a structure deck special. So basically, you have Touka. You get to remove 3000 BP. It does cost 4, but I think a lot of specials cost 4. So yeah, this is what you use in Touka deck. 5-drop Kaneki, again, referring to a lot of cards that interact with 5-cost Kanekis. Now, this ability is a little bit special. I'm just checking my time. I don't have that much time. I might actually... Yeah, I'm going to talk about all these cards, but then I'm going to have to end the recording session here soon. This card is on play. Look at the top card of your deck and place it at top or bottom. It's their color trigger as well. So if you use this card, you cannot use your other color triggers. But this ability is interesting. Basically, you have to have cards in your discard pile with different number of energy requirements. So, you know, 0-drop Hiname, a 1-drop Kaneki, maybe a 2-drop Kaneki, a 3-drop Uta, a 4-drop, you know, whatever, a 4-drop, you know, special or whatever. Actually, the special in this deck is a 6-cost, but so you just have to have a lot of cards in your discard pile. And the more different energy costs you have in your discard pile, the more abilities these Kanekis get. So that's why graveyard manipulation with Hiname and Uta are important. So that's why I keep stressing that Hiname and Uta are the bread and butter of your purple decks. We have Shuu, and again, I'll talk about Shuu later, but this card could be very strong. So it's your raised Shuu, and he has a removal ability. So basically, you get to choose a character on your enemy's field. You give it minus 1000 BP, plus if you remove more cards from your outside area, you can add additional 500 BP. So let's say you want to remove 6 characters from your outside area to your removal area. You can remove cards that have 4000 BP. So this card is removal. Super strong. Not only that, but when you attack with them, you can remove an additional card, and then it gains impact 1. Keep in mind, you can't remove field cards. You can only remove character cards and event cards. So maybe you want to not use that field card, but it's up to you, right? So yeah, this guy can remove. It counts as removal, and he has impact. He does cost 5 energy regeneration. So you do need like a 2 energy generation on your back line, but super strong. Like this card is super strong because it has removal and he has impact. And again, this is technically like a mid-game card, because end game you want to use this guy, but you know, mid game you're using him to remove. We have the Kaneki special. So you notice I mentioned that there are 3 purple decks. Well, there's 3 purple decks, which means that there are 3 different specials in 3 different colors, right? The decks make themselves, I tell you. It's no wonder you get eaten by me. So it's a special trigger. And if there's a Kaneki in your area, if there is Kaneki in your area, and then in your discard pile you have 3 or more different energy cost cards, this card is actually only costing 4 energy. which is great. The reason why that's good is because that requirement isn't the most difficult to get. You just need 3 different energy cards in your discard. But this is also a 6-drop card. So this card contributes to itself. And again, you just want to use a bunch of cards with different energy costs when it comes to that Kaneki deck. So this card is pretty strong. And again, it just removes a 5,000 cost, or 5,000 BP, which is strong. It's Mine is the Shuu special. So if you have Shuu, reduce the cost by 2. So it costs 4. However, if your opponent has a card with a card underneath it, then reduce it by 2 more, which is interesting. So basically, if your opponent is playing, for example, the Touka Deck, or perhaps they're playing, a red Asta deck, where they have cards underneath their cards, then this card becomes even cheaper, which I think is funny. And again, 5,000 BP and retire it. So quite good. I think this card, you're always going to play Shuu. You're always going to have Shuus in your area. So this card is always going to cost 4, but there's a chance that it might cost 2, which is fun. We have 7-drop Ken Kaneki. So again, 7-drop makes it so that, you know what? I'm just going to add it to my hand, and I'm just going to discard it with Uta, because it costs 2 action. So you can add it to your hand with Uta. You can discard it immediately just to add to your discard pile. But if you decide to use them, if you have 5 or more different energies or card with different energy requirements in your discard pile, you can reduce its cost by 2. So instead of costing 7, it costs 5, which is a lot more manageable than 7. 7 technically you can get if you have like a bunch of Utas, a bunch of the other guy that you can stack your deck. On your turn, it gets 1,000 BP. So on your turn, it gets 5,000 BP. So it means that your opponent's going to have a very hard time blocking it. Even if they have a 5,000 BP character, they can't block it. Or they can block it, but that 5,000 BP character will get sent to the discard pile. But it's only on your turn, not on their turn. And then on play, your opponent must block this card. So there you go. That got this basically... Cards that say your opponent must block this card, that card is removal. This card is removal. It comes in active, and your opponent has to block it. So technically, it's removal. Your opponent gets to choose what card they decide to sacrifice, but this card technically is removal. Just not targeted removal. And then once per turn, if this card attacks and wins, you can set it to active. So there you go. It's technically double removal. Again, it's hard to get this guy summoned because it costs a lot of energy. It does cost 2 action points, which can be reduced if you have certain cards. But the payoff is huge. It gets 5,000 on your turn. It plays as active. Your opponent must block this card, and on the turn you summon it, it can attack twice if it knocks out a character. Super strong. It will knock out a character because your opponent has to block with it. And then now I got the big boy. The big boy, Ken Kaneki. This is the hard card to get out because it costs 12 energy. And then you have to have, or for every different energy cost card you have in your discard pile, it reduces this guy's cost by 1. So if you have like a 0-drop, 1-drop, 2-drop, 3-drop, 4-drop, then you can reduce this card's cost by 4. And it still costs 8 energies. So now you need, to send a 5-drop, a 6-drop, a 7-drop. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then if you discard 12 cost Ken Kaneki, that's 8. So so the maximum amount of energy that this guy can be reduced is by 8. And that means you have to discard basically 8 cards of all different energy requirements and have a Ken Kaneki in hand to raid with. And then you have to have a Ken Kaneki on board to raid with. So the requirement is crazy. Obviously, you only need, you can have cards that reduces action point by 1 to make him cheaper to summon and stuff like that. But this card is hard to get out. But the payoff is huge because it has Impact 1. Impact 1, 5,000 BP. So basically, your opponent is gonna eat the damage. They're gonna eat the Impact 1 because even if they have a 5,000 BP card to block with, they're still going to take the impact one. So they're always going to take that damage. And when attacking, this is funny. Your opponent may play 7 cards from their outside area to the removal area. And if your opponent decided to remove 7 cards from their graveyard, you get to draw 2 and place 1 card from your hand into your active area. So basically, you get card advantage. If your opponent doesn't do that, or let's say they can't do it because they don't have enough card in their outside area, or you've already used this ability, then your opponent has to choose one of their characters, or I'm sorry, you choose one of their characters on their front line with 5,000 BP or less and retire it. That is super strong. Basically, this card is removal, targeted removal. I guess this guy's removal, but this guy's targeted removal, and you can go up to 5,000. So it's basically just a normal special trigger. And yeah, and this guy is technically also disruption. So if your opponent is playing a deck that requires stuff in their outside area, you're making them send those cards, because probably what your opponent's gonna do is they're probably gonna send 7 cards in their discard pile to their active area so that you don't remove one of their cards. But if that's too big of a drawback, then you get to yeet one of their characters. So obviously this guy is super powerful, right? There's no question about it. The card is a powerful card, but it's just the payoff is, or the cost of it is super high. I'm going to end the recording here, and then I'm not sure if I'm going to make another video or I'm going to make a video talking about the decks. Or I'm going to continue this video talking about the decks. But that's probably what I want to do. I want to continue the video talking about the decks. And honestly, the decks are pretty short because I've already talked about all the cards, right? So now that we've talked about the cards, let's go ahead and talk about the deck. So like I mentioned, the first deck we're going to go here is the Touka deck. I think Touka's not the most difficult deck to build around. Basically, you want to include the 2 structure deck SRs, and then of course you want to include the Touka from the pack, and then the rest of it is just kind of supporting cast, right? Again, Union Arena, most of the time the deck make themselves. For 0 cost, we're using 0 cost Kaneki, 0 cost Touka, and 0 cost Hinami. Now, of course, you need to play Touka and Kaneki just so that you can get your raids off, because you do run 4 raid Toukas and 4 raid Kanekis, and so you want to maximize these. Really, I mean, the triggers are also kind of just get for Kaneki and active for Touka. I prefer draw triggers, but you really don't have an option here, right? Hinami is going to be your premium 0 drop. Yes, Hinami can't be rated on, but she does have incredible powers. Like I mentioned earlier, you can draw 1, discard 1, which is really good for, again, putting certain cards into your discard pile that you might not want to keep, like Rize's. Also, early game, sometimes you might not have a perfect curve. And so starting with Hinami, you're able to start drawing cards so that you can dig for more of your cheap options, so that you can go ahead and build out your curve so that you don't absolutely get destroyed in the mid game. And end game, she can also be used as a buffer. Your Toukas are going to be double attacking. So imagine a double attacker with 5,000 attack, right? Nothing is going to be able to block that. And so your enemies are able to buff up your other characters as well. And of course, our trigger is a draw trigger, which in my opinion is the good trigger. Of course, get triggers are good when you don't have anything and you need 0 drops. So Hinami is great in that sense. And then also, I am playing 12. I guess I'll talk later about like card count, but we don't mind playing extra Hinamis and Toukas and Kanekis just because we can discard them with our Utas, right? Next, I'm playing 1 drop Kaneki. He does have an ability to where if he is set to resting, when on front line can only be activated if a character is active. Look top card of the deck. Okay, I need to read this card's ability again. Okay, so Kaneki has an ability when it's on the front line, you can look at the top card of your deck and then place it at the top of the deck or outside area. So again, just kind of peeking at the top card of your deck, see if you want to keep it or just send it to the graveyard. If it's perhaps a Rize or like a Hinami, you can go ahead and just ditch that card, really, right? But this card is good is because even though this card doesn't have a lot of BP, this is a card that you're going to be wanting on your front line so that you can perhaps manipulate it with Touka later. Also, just more targets for Kaneki to raid with. This card doesn't have a trigger, so that's a little bit concerning, but in terms of power and you need Kaneki to raid with, you're using him, right? We're using the 1-cost Touka. This card, again, can manipulate the Kaneki on your front line, make them rested, and then this card also gains 2000 BP. So again, you're playing a lot of 1-drops here to be able to kind of fill out your curve, and then this character can get stronger. You're probably not going to be really using that ability to get stronger. This is probably, again, just a raid target. And of course, this is also your color trigger, and your color trigger is very strong because you can go ahead and put a low cost card from your discard pile onto the field for more additional raids. You can put herself, or not like trigger for herself, but like, you know, other characters like your 1-drop Kanekis and your Touka. So that's super strong to just build out your board to get more targets to raid with. I am using Rize, 2-drop Rize. Now again, this card you're not going to be summoning on board. You're probably going to be trying to discard. If it's in your hand, you're going to be trying to discard it with your Hinamis, you know, your Utas and stuff like that. I think Kaneki also discards cards too. Yeah, so Kaneki, raid Kaneki can discard cards, and so this is going to be a great discard target. You're probably not going to want to play it unless you really need to like curve out. But if you have this card in your discard pile, super strong, you can just slap it underneath a Kaneki and set it to active if you give it minus 1000 BP. And sometimes that could be good because even if you're giving it a minus 1000 BP, setting it to active so that you can manipulate the Kaneki with Touka is very strong. And of course, even if it is active with 3000 BP, you can still do damage if, you know, they don't have blockers, right? And if you killed all their cards with the Toukas. Super strong there. And of course, 2-drop Kaneki. This card can be your negate impact if you need it, if you put a card under it with Rize. With Rize, you can recycle her. So if they get rid of your Kaneki with Rize, you can keep on recycling your Rize. So you don't need that much in your discard pile. But you want to play 4 because this is the only card that has that ability in this deck. And this Kaneki is a negate impact, but also when it has a card underneath it, it gains 1000 BP. And so that can be your 4000 attacker right there. And of course, you're just having more targets to raid with. With this, the amount of Kaneki is 10. So you have 10 Kaneki that you can raid with. Of course, I'm playing Uta, not maxing out Uta, because it's not super important to get cards in your discard pile in this deck. Again, the only thing you need to get into your discard pile is Rize. So we mainly have Uta to help with that, but also he helps searching for your raid Toukas. He also generates 2 energies, which is nice too. So you can go ahead and use a few Utas on your back line, and then you can just step up a bunch of your other characters to attack with, because, you know, some of your cheaper cards that you might be building your board with early game can help with attacking, you know, mid game. Like your Toukas, like this 2-drop Kaneki, right? Because they both gain power. I'm using 3-drop Touka. Now again, this card also doesn't have triggers, so we're using a lot of cards that don't end up having triggers, like this Rize, like this Kaneki. This Touka doesn't have a trigger, but it is just a pretty strong card normally because it's a 3-cost card, but it has 4000 BP on your turn. So no need to raid, and it's a cheap card, and it already starts having a lot of power on your turn. And on play, you can rest 1 Kaneki to set it as active. So it can be a cheap card that can have 4000 power that can get active when you summon it. Of course, again, the problem with this card is that it doesn't have trigger, and oftentimes this card might just be a raid target as well. After this Touka, I've given you 10 Touka cards that can be acting as raid targets. Technically, Shuu Deck Touka can count as a raid target, but you're probably not raiding with her. That would be very low value. Of course, we're using 4 of the SR Toukas, the 4-drop raid from the pack. This card is super strong, like I mentioned, because when you play it, you can draw a card, or you can just summon a card. Choose one character. Oh, I'm sorry, it doesn't summon a card. I need to read the cards. You can set a character as active, but it has to be 3 or lower cost card. So basically, cards that you're going to be resting are, the Kaneki from other effects. So you might be using this Touka's effect or this Touka's effect, the 1-drop Touka, the 3-drop Touka, or the structure deck Touka. You might want to use those cards first, and then you can go ahead and use this Touka to set one of those cards as active. Or let's say you have summoned this Touka or this Kaneki on your front line, then you can go ahead and use this to set that Kaneki as active so that you can use her ability to rest the Kaneki again, right? Or you can just draw. And then on the main phase, you can rest a Kaneki on your front line and give it double attack. So again, that effect, by the way, like I mentioned earlier, it's on your main phase when on front line, once per turn. So basically, you can use this every turn that Touka is up, and so this card again becomes a threat because your opponent needs to deal with it, or you're gonna slap your opponent twice every turn. Similarly, I'm gonna talk about this Touka as well. Now that we're talking about Toukas, plays as active is a 2 cost. It takes 2 action points to use this card, so it's quite expensive. But it does play as active, and then similarly to the other Touka, it can rest the Kaneki to get double attack. And the second attack has impact 1, and I mentioned earlier that the second attack having impact 1 is important because it means that they have to make a decision that, okay, if I block the first attack, then I'm going to eat the second attack. And if I block the first attack and then eat the second attack as at impact 1, and I hit a special trigger, then this Touka would have gotten 2 attacks in. Because if impact happens first and then non-impact happens, then the impact would happen first. Your opponent will eat the damage, and then they'll pop their special trigger, and it will destroy the Touka without getting a second attack off. And so, I think impact for the second attack is better. It's kind of what I'm saying. And then your raid Kaneki, again, this is your structure that Kaneki, great because it has negate impact. That's always great. And then on play, draw 2, discard 1. Again, that can help facilitate your reads as you discard. It can also discard cards like Hinami that you don't need, or Utas that you don't need to draw for, your better puzzle pieces like the Toukas and the Kanekis. And of course, if this card has a card face down, which again, if you have Rize to put underneath Kaneki, then he can be set as active. And so basically the combo is you're using Kaneki, you set him to resting with one of your Touka's abilities, and then you can go ahead and send him to active again so that he can attack, right? You want him active so that he can do more attacks. So basically with this deck, the goal is getting, 5 or 6 attacks in a turn. Very reminiscent of Blue Sword Art Online, Asuna and Kirito. That deck kind of has a similar concept of you're trying to get a lot of attacks per turn, whether, from double attacks or from switching front line to back line. This deck has that similar thing. Of course, we're using 4 final triggers and 4 Touka special. So the special trigger specifically is if you have Touka, you get to remove something with 4,000 or with 5,000 or less BP. So that's normal, your normal stuff. So that's kind of the deck. Admittedly, this deck has a lot of low cost cards. I have 12 0 drops and 8 1 costs. So super, super low curve. If you want to play more expensive cards, you definitely can. Let's say instead of this Kaneki, you want to run more of the 2-drop Kanekis. You can go ahead and do that. The 2-drop Kaneki does have trigger, so maybe you want to consider less of the non-triggers for more of the triggers. The Toukas, you want to play 4 of the color Toukas. I don't think you can argue with that. Just because the color trigger is so strong and you need Toukas to raid with. I wouldn't really recommend switching for more of the 3-drop Toukas, because again, I'm only playing 2 of her just because her trigger isn't that great. I am only playing 3 of the structure deck Toukas. Maybe you can bump this up to 4. You can remove a non-trigger Kaneki for another Touka. But again, this is just the structure. This is just the deck that I kind of went with. You can go ahead and test and change the card numbers as you will. And of course, there's a bunch of other cards that you can add to the deck. I just think that this is, a basic build that utilizes, the structure deck SRs as well as Uta for support and Touka from the pack for more damage, right? The next deck is the Kaneki deck, all right? So this is going to be using that big boy 12 drop or 12 cost Kaneki, right? And so we're trying to facilitate him. And so if you look at this curve here, I don't know why like this has the curve or the stats on the side, but you can see 0 drops, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we have like, and 12 drops too. It doesn't show it on the graph, but like we have a lot of different cards with energy requirements, right? But of course, the most we have are the 0 drops because we need to start the game. And also we have a lot of 3 drops, and that's because of, your final trigger and Uta, which I think are really strong. Starting off with Kaneki, our 12 drop Kaneki is a raid, so you need raid targets, so you're always using Kaneki. Hinami again is good in this deck because you want to have cards in your discard pile with different energy requirements, and Hinami can help facilitate that. So that's why she's in this deck. The 1000 extra power isn't the greatest because this deck I don't think needs it as much because their Kanekis already have a lot of power to them. I am also playing Hinami's mother here. This card doesn't have a trigger, which is unfortunate, but cards like these normally don't have triggers. Basically what this card allows you to do is it allows you to pump more energies out so that you have more energies in your back row. So hopefully it can help you summon the big boy Kaneki or like the 7 drop Kaneki if you need it. I can definitely see this being replaced by other 0 drops, but I'm not exactly sure who's better. Just maybe you value triggers more, We also continue playing this 1 drop Kaneki because this card also facilitates putting cards in your discard pile. Unfortunately, this doesn't have as much synergy as if it was a Touka card, because with Touka you can set this guy to resting for Touka to get double attack, right? But this card is you're able to like put stuff in your discard pile, and of course you still need Kanekis to raid with, right? So that's why I'm running for these. But I can see you cutting this card out just because it has no trigger. I like Nishiki here. I really like him, so I'm using him a lot in this deck. And the 2 drop, because we need 2 drops, just discard top 2 card of your deck. I mean, sure, you might discard some important cards, but I just think it's worth putting cards in your discard pile. And also you need a 2 drop, and he's the only 2 drop in this deck, and so there you go. We play Uta, I mentioned before, but Uta can basically search for all your Kanekis, because all of your... Wait, this Kaneki only costs 1 action point. Okay, you cannot search for 5 drop Kaneki, but you can discard 5 drop Kaneki from his ability. But yes, being able to search for like your 12 drop Kaneki and potentially even discard him. Like let's say it's early game and you summon Uta, you can just straight up discard a Kaneki, because it will help summon future Kanekis or 12 drop Kanekis. Or you can go ahead and search for the 7 drop Kaneki because he requires 2 actions to play. So you can always search for this guy as well. And also you might be using his secondary ability, which is look at the top 3 card of your deck, add 1 to your hand, and then place the remaining in outside area. So again, you can rest him in order to get more stuff into your discard pile, and also get a card too. So again, his normal ability, you're allowed to discard 2 cards if you add a card to your hand, and so that's a lot of stuff that you're putting to your outside area. And again, with him, you can discard stuff like Hinami and Hinami's mother if it's like late game, and you don't need those cards. Another 3 drop I'm using is Nishiki. Again, 3 drop. This card allows you to look at the top card of your deck and then discard it or put it back. So again, just kind of making sure that the next card you draw is good. He is also a 2 energy producer. So similar to Uta, he is a 2 energy producer, and so you want a lot of these when you're playing 12 drop Kaneki and 7 drop Kaneki, right? We're playing 5 drop Kaneki. I'm only playing 3 copies of him. Maybe you should bump this up. Maybe you should only use like 2 copies of 3-drop Nishiki and use 4 copies of Kaneki that cost 5 energies, just so that you have, more 5 drops. And with this card, he gets damage too if you have 5 or more different cards in your discard pile with like different energy requirements, so it can get damage too. Also on play, you can look at top card of your deck and then you can top deck it, or you can like discard it or not, similar to the 3-drop Nishiki. But again, the most important thing here is that this is your color trigger. So if you have this card as a trigger, you get to kind of resummon a Hinami or a Nishiki and then discard more cards. So it can be very strong here with that trigger. And again, you just want 5 drops so that you can have different cards in your discard pile. We're playing 7-drop Ken Kaneki here. And 7-drop, similar to the other Ken Kaneki, if you have 5 or different type, or 5 or more cards in your discard pile with different energy, then you reduce the cost by 2. So instead of costing 7, it costs 5, which is super manageable. 5 basically means you can have your full energy board and just have one of these cards that give you 2 energies. So Hinami's mom, Uta, and Nishiki can all do that, right? So not terrible to get this Ken Kaneki out. Keep in mind he does cost 2 action points. However, he does get to play as active. He has 5,000 power on your turn, and your opponent must block this card. The turn you summon it, at least. Your opponent must block this card, and then if your opponent blocks it, and then you win the battle, you get to attack again. You get to set this character as active. And again, when it's set as active, on that turn, it still gets that effect that your opponent must block it. And so, like I mentioned earlier, this kind of like removal, it can remove 2 cards on your opponent's board. Even though your opponent gets to choose what cards gets removed, this card can remove 2 cards with a cost of 2 action points. So super strong. And then of course the big boy, the 12-drop Ken Kaneki. It's a raid, so it's gonna be very expensive to get. Basically, anytime you summon this guy, you're probably gonna have a full board and a bunch of stuff in your discard pile. And then on top of that, you need to get rid of one of your cards on your board to raid with him, which is probably going to be, again, your 0-drop or your 1-drop Ken Kanekis. Probably not a good idea to raid with one of the more expensive Ken Kanekis. But he has Impact 1, so he's always going to do damage, right? Because he has 5,000 BP, normally an Impact 1, which is super strong. And of course, when you attack, depending on what your opponent does, you can draw 2 cards and discard 1 card if they decide to remove from play 7 cards. Or you get to just remove a card on their board. So that's super strong, especially if your opponent is reliant on their outside area. That means that they're going to have to be like removing all their cards, which is good for you because you get cards. But if not, if they don't have enough cards or they need their outside area to play stuff or to play their deck, then this guy's removal. So Impact 1 with removal is super strong. This is the payoff for summoning this guy because he's super, super strong. But again, it's just really hard to get him out. Coffee. And this is our 4-drop, by the way. Our 4-drop this is the only 4-drop in the deck. It's the thing that makes the Kanekis cheaper. So it has an ability, it reduces the action point of the next Ken Kaneki by 1. So it doesn't make the cost in terms of like the energy requirements cheaper, but it makes it so that action points are cheaper. So basically you can go ahead and play the 5-drop Ken Kaneki for free, or the raid Ken Kaneki for free, and the 7-drop costs 1 energy, or 1 action point, I'm sorry. And of course, this card also helps discard cards. So look at the top 4, choose 1 among them, place it in your hand, and then you discard the rest. So again, it just helps dig for cards. The only 6-drop of your deck is actually your special trigger, and it is basically only costs 4 if you have 3 or different like cards in your outside area that are different energy. So honestly, a pretty easy requirement. So it basically can always cost 4, and it just destroys something with 5,000 or less BP. So super strong. Again, I think this deck really requires playing with the deck list. I feel, again, I just threw a bunch of stuff together, but I can see how some of these, some of these cards you can change the ratio of, maybe I'm playing too many 3 drops, maybe I'm playing too many 0 drops. Maybe you want to switch that around so that you have more, more 4 drops, more 5 drops, stuff like that. But I think that the payoff, if you can summon like 2 of these Kaneki, is very hard for your opponent to deal with. And if you summon 1, that means you probably have enough energy or stuff in your outside area to summon another one. So it can be very, very scary, that this deck. So I think it's fun for sure. And then the last deck we're going to be talking about is the Shuu Sukiyama deck. All right, because he's the other SR and the other special trigger. So of course we're using 4 of him. He doesn't have an ability, but he does have a get trigger. And you just need to run 4 of him just because he has a raid. So you just need to run 4 of him. Hinami, again, is good in this deck for a different reason. For this deck, you want as many cards in your outside area as possible. And once again, Hinami facilitates that by discarding a card. Hinami's mother also helps with that because she actually, when you use her ability for her to gain double energy regeneration, she's sent to the discard at the end of the turn. And so technically, this card helps with feeding your outside area, your discard pile. Keep in mind that your Shuu Sukiyama costs 5 energies. And so you do need to have 5 energy in the back row. And Ryoko can help with that. We're using 1 drop Itori because we need more cheaper cards. I mean, I guess you don't need to play her, but she has a good trigger, and I think her ability is pretty good. Basically, you look at the top 3 card of your deck, you ditch 1, and then you place the other one in your deck in any order. So instead of just looking at the top card and then putting it back or ditching it, you actually get to ditch 1, but then the other 2, you get to choose which order you get them in. So this card is a lot better than just looking at 1 card and ditching it. This card is like, oh, you look at 3, you ditch 1, and then it's better to top deck. It's better to get better cards on top of your deck with Itori. So I like her. Of course, you have to play 1 drop Shuu because you need targets to raid with. This card doesn't have a trigger, but again, he's able to look at the top 2 card of your deck and search for events. Now you are running 12 events, so the chance of this happening isn't like terrible. But he at least always discards 2 cards, because even if you don't hit an event, you will discard those 2 cards. And yeah, if you don't hit an event, you discard 2 cards. If you hit an event, you're still discarding 2 cards because you get the event and you discard a card. And honestly, if you get an event and you don't want it, you can go ahead and discard it. I don't really recommend discarding specials, but you could if you want. Nishiki, once again, you discard the top 2 cards of your deck. So very similar to what Shuu does, but you just straight discard 2. And again, you just want a lot of cards in your discard area. Uta, I mean, I sound like a broken record. He's able to discard 2 cards with his ability. He's also able to search for... The problem with Uta in this deck is even though you like discarding a lot of cards, he can only search for 1 card. He only searches for Array Shuu. And so that makes this card not the greatest because he doesn't have a lot of targets to search for. So I can see why this card might not be the best value in this deck because the searching might not be the greatest. But at the end of the day, he's a 2 energy generator, which you need when you play a 5 drop. And his abilities are just strong to get stuff in a discard. I want to talk about Raid Shuu first. Again, this card is just removal. If you have a bunch of stuff in your outside area, you can remove them to, remove a 5,000 or a 4,000 card, 4,000 BP card when you play this. If you remove 6 from your discard pile. On play, of course. So it's removal on play. And then when you attack, it gains impact 1 if you decide to remove a card from your outside area. And it gets impact 1. So that's super strong, right? So there's removal. And then late game, you want to play the non-raid version. And this non-raid version is pretty strong as well. Because as long as you have a lot of cards in your outside area. If you have a lot of cards in your removal area. When you play him, you get to just put 2 cards from your outside area into your removal area and you set it as active. So that's super strong just to have a 4 cost, 4,000 BP summon active as a 1 action point. Also, this guy's recyclable. So let's say your opponent has dealt with some of your raid shoes. This card can remove from play, your raid shoe, as well as the card that you raided with him. You remove those from play, and then you get him back. And so you can recycle this card, which I think is strong. This card is super strong as well. This event card, which is the color trigger of this deck. This card basically allows you to draw one card, and then if you have Shuu on board, you get to set one of your action points to active. So this is super strong in the sense that it makes it so that you can just go through your deck. Like, this card counts as nothing. Basically, you draw this card, you play it, and then you draw another card. So it's like a 1-for-1, and it costs you nothing as long as you have a Shuu on board, of course. And it's also your color trigger, so you can res your Hinami if you need to discard more, or your Ryoko if you need more energy regeneration, stuff like that. This card I think is super strong. Of course, your final trigger, your field. Now keep in mind, you cannot remove your field from, or you cannot move your field from your from your outside area to your removal area, because Shuu specifically says character cards and event cards. Character cards and event cards. Or I guess the 4-drop that's non-raid, you can move it. But the raid one, you cannot remove it. So just keep in mind, depending on what you do, you have to be careful if you are cheating or not, because you can't remove Ghoul Restaurant with Shuu himself, with the raid Shuu himself. But this card, like I mentioned earlier, is interesting because you can manipulate your removal area and actually put cards back into your outside area, so that you can perhaps recycle more or have more stuff in your outside area for removal. So it actually can go backwards. But at the end of the day, if you have Shuu, then you can basically draw one and discard one, as long as you remove from play 2 from your outside area to your removal area, which you will guaranteed have when you play the card, because you do it backwards. And then when you discard one card, technically you're also adding to the outside area. So really you're only losing one card in your outside area. And then his special I mentioned earlier, it basically costs 4 if you have Shuu on board. It costs 2 if you have Shuu on board, and if your enemy has a card underneath one of their cards, and just your normal removal. So I think this deck is, unfortunately, there isn't that many boss monsters. Like, I can definitely see if you want to remove Ghoul Restaurant, or you want to remove Utas and stuff for more late game options, because really you only have the raid Shuu and then the 4-cost non-raid Shuu as your kind of late game options. Shuu is removal, and so you do have a lot of removal options, which is nice, but I can see that this deck being not as powerful because you don't have as many late game options as, like, for example, the Touka Deck, where you have 2 different Toukas. You have Kaneki, who can attack himself. You have the lesser Toukas that also can get 4,000 BP and smack your opponent. So the Touka Deck is like a lot of options to attack with. Shuu, you basically only have 2 options. So I can see that at least how I built this deck, there isn't many offensive options. So this might be the weakest one, but it might be the weakest because of how I built it, not particularly the deck itself, right? And of course, Kaneki is just, it doesn't matter if you have a lot of late game options. Really, you just want to focus on your best option here, right? So those are the decks. I think in terms of strength, they're all relatively similar strength. Again, maybe the Shuu one's a little bit on the weaker side. That just might be the consequence of how I built the deck. But basically, Shuu and the Kaneki deck both have removal, which is super strong. Any deck that has removal in their main raid target is super strong. And of course, the Touka deck has a lot of manipulation where you can attack a lot, so that's super strong. I think all of them have impact in some sense. All of them have impact in some sense, so you can always inflict damage. Yes, indeed. So I think they're all pretty similar strength. Maybe the Touka one might end up being the strongest, but I think if you can consistently get this 12-drop Kaneki, then I mean, that's a force to be reckoned with. Final thing I want to mention is just kind of the cost of the cards. Like, what do I anticipate the cost of these cards being? Because Union Arena generally is on the cheaper side, but some SRs can get quite expensive, when I mean quite expensive, I mean like $10, which in the whole scheme of things isn't like terribly expensive. But generally speaking, a lot of the removal SRs tend to be a little bit on the more expensive side. So Touka and Uta for sure, I don't think are going to be that expensive. Maybe Touka will be expensive because it's like a female character. And generally the female characters are more expensive. Not always, but that's generally what happens. But I don't see this Touka being too expensive. Even though I don't think this Uta is going to be very expensive because he really isn't like a boss monster or a boss character. He is just super strong. Like, in my opinion, if you are planning on playing purple decks for Tokyo Ghoul, keep your Utas. If you pull Utas, you want to keep them. And honestly, you want to trade for them because I think Uta is just super good. As you see, I've used them in every deck because I'm an Uta believer. But I think he's super strong. If you are not playing purple, or if you're not, if you get Utas and you don't want to play with him, I think this card is a great bargaining chip. You can just convince people that he's super strong and then like trade up for him. So I think he's the best SR of the purple ones, and I think he might. I don't think he's gonna be expensive, but he should be realistically. And of course, you probably want to keep your enemies. She's a common, or actually she's a rare. My bad. She's a rare, so it's not gonna be expensive, but she's a great card. Again, I use her in all the purple decks. Structure deck cards are not really worth talking about because they're not going to be really expensive, and you can always just buy 2 structure decks to guarantee all your SRs that you need for the structure deck SRs. For the Ken Kaneki, I feel like expensive cards are very often not really expensive cards in the sense of energy costs aren't really expensive in real life. These cards are just way too inconsistent to get out, and so I don't think this Ken Kaneki would be expensive. Again, it is Ken Kaneki, which is the face of Tokyo Ghoul, so maybe he'll be a little bit on the pricier side, but I really don't think he's going to be that expensive. If anything, he might be like sub $5 with Touka here, which I don't expect to be anywhere more than $5. I think Uta we're looking at like $2 range. Like I don't Uta is like $1, $2 range, even though I think he's worth like $10. Hopefully he doesn't end up being $10, but I think he's worth $10, but like, honestly, he's probably not going to be worth that much when the set comes out. And then I think Shuu, again, he is removal, but I don't think he's going to be that expensive as well. I think the removal cards, peak, he might be $10. I'm not sure how good his support is, though. So a lot of removal cards end up being like, around a $10 range. So depending on how good he is, he might be $10. But again, removal cards tend to be more expensive. Even though Shuu isn't as popular as Ken Kaneki and Touka, I still believe that he might be the most expensive one just because he is removal. And I think people really like removal cards. They end up being more expensive. So yeah, all in all, Uta is probably going to be your cheapest card out of these purple cards, even though I think he's the best. And then the other cards are probably going to be, I don't think, Touka and Ken Kaneki, I think are going to be like maybe $5 or under. I think Shuu might be, again, I'm overestimating him because he's removal, but he realistically should be around the same range, $5 under. Hopefully all these cards are super affordable and they're all like under $2, $1, stuff like that. Anyways, that's it for purple. I think I'm excited about purple. I think structure deck Touka is going to be super fun. I think this Ken Kaneki is also like basically just a combo deck. You just want to get this guy out. I think that's going to be super fun. Shuu Deck is a little bit more underwhelming, but again, at the end of the day, he is removal, which consistent removal, by the way, so can't go wrong with that. Thank you for watching. You're beautiful the way you are, and next time I'll talk about the red decks. It's going to be a faster video because there's only 2 decks that you can play with red because there's no structure deck. So that video is going to be a little bit faster. So I know this one was probably super long, but I appreciate you sitting through it with me. All right, see you guys then.